there and welcome back to Don't Open That Door. Come along with our triumvirate of terror as we descend into darkness, hurl into horror, and plunge into peril. If you're a voyeur, you're in the right place.
I don't like that.
I'm Justin, and I think we should mix our life force.
I'm Nico, and what's that, children? Do you see it? Do you hear it? That's right. We're coming back on the hate train for this one, boys and girls.
I hate you.
Well, I'm Dan, and I got a lot of life force to drain.
Oh, no.
And we're here today to review, you guessed it, Lifeforce. This one was directed by Tobe Hooper, starring Steve Railsback, that's not all he's railing, as Colonel Carlson.
Shut the fuck up. You're not wrong, but I go on. But still shut the fuck up. But do go on. But still shut the fuck up.
Oh.
This is going to be one of those episodes, dear listener, where it's going to be a blast. Are we going to talk about the movie? Yeah, maybe.
Oh, there was some blasting involved.
Peter Firth as Colonel Kane. Mathilda May as the space girl, but she's really a vampire.
Is her name Mathilda?
I'm pretty sure it's Matilda, but I didn't check, so... I mean, hey. We're rolling fast and loose tonight, baby.
I mean, Matilda is spelled like Mathilda, but it's pronounced like Matilda.
Listen, how you say math?
Correctly.
Frank Finlay as Dr. Falada. And the legendary, make it so, Patrick Stewart as Dr. Armstrong.
Yep.
What a wasted talent in this movie.
Truly.
We open on the spaceship Churchill under the command of Colonel Tom Carlson. The crew discovers a huge spacecraft hiding in the coma of Halley's Comet, and they decide to investigate. Inside the craft, they find weird and dead bat-like aliens and 3 totally naked humanoid bodies, 1 female and 2 male. The crew decides to take the humanoids and 1 bat alien thing and head back to Earth.
It's like a buy one, get one free type deal.
Yeah. But on the journey back, however, all communication with the Churchill is lost. Oh no!
I wish all communication with you has been lost.
Well, one person I'd love to communicate with is Nico. What happens next?
So a rescue mission is sent to investigate, and they discover that the Churchill has been absolutely wrecked by fire. All the crew is dead, but there is 1 escape pod missing. And now, these 3 bare-assed bodies are discovered and taken back to Earth for autopsies. Just before the female's autopsy, she wakes up and drains the life force from a guard. By, relations. Kind of. She proceeds to consume people's life force as she escapes from the facility. The 2 males wake up and attempt to escape as well themselves, but they suck. Not like that, though. Not this time. And they get blown up by grenades. Oh, well. Wah, wah, wah. 2 hours after being drained by the female, then, the OG guard resurrects, but now he has the ability to drain some life force. What does any of this mean? I'm still not sure, and I just watched it.
Well, maybe I can help you, Nico. You see, now, the Churchill's escape pod is discovered, and as it turns out, Carlson is still alive. He recounts the events on the Churchill, including how he was compelled by the female vampire to share his life force with her. And then she drained the rest of the crew.
Oh.
A tear comes out my eye for him. He didn't want the vampires to be unleashed on Earth because they were far too sexy. So he set fire to the ship and escaped in the pod. Because of sharing his life force with her, though, he's developed some psychic abilities and a psychic link with the female vampire. And he ends up telling people actually she can kind of shapeshift and change bodies and possess people. So yeah, that's a whole thing, and they got to stop her. So Carlson teams up with another colonel from the British SAS named Kane to track her down. Nico, I know you know about Kane. What's really good going on here?
Well, while Carlson and Kane, not a law firm, are tracking down the female vampire, it turns out that the 2 male vampires actually survived the grenades. Somehow. And they escaped by shape-shifting into the guards. Man. So they're now wreaking havoc on London and infecting, quite literally everyone. Martial law is declared as the vampires begin to multiply by draining people's life force. The female vampire then is posted up in a church and is beaming up the drained life force to the vamp's spaceship, which is now in orbit above London.
Nico, is that asynchronous or desynchronous orbit?
I'm gonna say that's
Synchronous. It's just synchronous.
You got the question wrong, but I know the Star People Dan is definitely going to wrap this one up right. How's this movie end?
Well, things get a little weird if they haven't been already. But Carlson and Kane reach a military outpost
again, not a law
and
firm.
learn that the UN is going to nuke London to contain the vampires. Well, Carlson goes out on his own to the female vampire, and Kane goes back to the initial autopsy facility and finds one of our bare naked trio, one of the dudes, dead.
It's bad.
He learns that the vampires are weak to being stabbed through the chest, not with wood, but with, quote, leaded iron.
Is there unleaded iron?
Apparently.
I looked this shit up, and I do have an answer for you.
Oh, shit.
Well,
We'll talk about
Kane
it.
uses this knowledge to kill the remaining male and then finds Carlson. But Carlson's getting it on with the female vamp. Good for him. Well, Kane tosses down the leaded weapon, and Carlson stops giving the female vampire the pipe, only to give her the leaded pipe, but he stabs her seppuku style, think like Yoshimitsu, killing them both in the process. The movie ends with Carlson and the female vampire's life force ascending to the spaceship and leaving. The end.
Well, lads, we got a lot to talk about. This one's a classic for sure. Dan,
Is it?
Classic.
a classic DOTD episode at any rate. Dan, why don't you tell me how this one looks?
Boy, it sure looks. I don't know where to start. There's a lot of what I assume to be practical effects, a ton.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of these vampires. We see vampires in their bat form. We see them be like very zombie-like and sort of drained of their life, which kind of reminded me of Return of the Living Dead in that sort of like zombie-esque kind of look. Yeah, there was a lot of practical effects that looked kind of good, but also kind of goofy.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of a combination of both. A lot of CG effects too. Whenever somebody's life force was drained out, there's like all this blue stuff whizzing around everywhere.
Yo,
which looked
shout outs
kinda-
to the fucking scene in the helicopter where they're just like super soaking some V8 across the bay or whatever the hell.
Yeah, so there's a ton of effects, a ton of stuff going on. I thought it looked kind of good in the campy 80s kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I thought that the movie, and spoilers, I did kind of read a little bit about this, but I feel like the movie ran out of money halfway through, and there's certain signs.
That explains some of this. Not all, mind you.
Well, when they first start turning people into vampires, like the corpses are really cool. Like they're desiccated, and I like the way that they looked. And then that whole aspect goes away at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
And it's just not that anymore. So I feel like I have a lot more praise for the effects of the first half of the movie. And then shit just gets downright goofy sometimes. Like what Nico said, where Patrick Stewart just bleeds out like 18 gallons of Hawaiian punch to form like, I don't know, a blood statue.
A beautiful strawberry woman made of Jello.
Who then explodes. And I'm just like, well, that happened. And they carry on too. They're just like, fuck it, that happened. And they just keep going. It's never addressed again.
One of the things that I love about that scene and also just kind of drive me off the fucking wall is the script in this movie is fucking bad. And whenever something like that happens, they'll say nothing remotely intelligent, but like I distinctly remember, I don't remember if it was the pilot, but just someone in there, as soon as she goes like splash, they just go, "We lost her." Like, yeah, man, you sure did. You sure fucking did, bud.
Well, Nico, I hope we don't lose you, but how do you think the movie looked generally?
I am not a fan of the cinematography for this, at all. I think that an overwhelmingly large number of scenes were shot with this strange, almost top-down topographical thing that was not quite fisheye, but like a distant cousin of it that just looked awkward. There were multiple times also when I'm just going to say it, I wasn't a fan of the practical effects. I think the first one looked dope. I think the rest of it was a way too mackin' me for me. For starting off as what I expected initially to be some kind of great value event horizon, the scene changes in this just have the tone all over the place, and it never really feels like any one genre. It's just tonally discordant is how I would describe it. So that's what I think of the visuals.
Mm-hmm. Now, moving on to sound, I'm going to say the sound is actually pretty good. I believe it's done by, Dan, help me out here, the London Philharmonic Orchestra. Were they the ones who did it here?
It was the London Symphony Orchestra, actually.
Oh, shit, bet. Well, yeah. I mean, I thought that the music was good, but sometimes I was a little confused as to some of the motifs. Like, it'd be Dire Straits, and all of a sudden we'd get like a almost upbeat like motif. Almost like, you know how the Godzilla March is a little bit upbeat in the classic version?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, this is weird. This is so fucking weird. But Dan, what'd you think about the sounds?
My two comments are playing off of what you just said there. This first one, the end credits score was fucking dope. I don't know if either of you listened to it, but it was really fucking good, actually. And I was like, yo, this shit is epic as shit. So that was pretty cool. But also, I don't know that this is quite sound, but several of the actors like overact a lot of their dialogue.
I count
And
that.
not quite to the point of like, oh my God. Not quite like Troll 2 level, but it's very overacted and overdone.
Troll 1.5.
Yeah.
Agreed. And Nico, just sound off on the sound, my friend.
I was not a fan of the soundtrack. It was well done by all the players, of course, and like the actual music itself sounded fine, but it just, again, felt so discordant to me. It was almost as if I was watching Labyrinth or another really campy fantasy movie from the 70s, and it just did not fit at all to me. So, sorry to say it, boys, but, shoot, hold on. I done told you.
All right. So now I gotta ask, and this is kind of 2-in-1 here. First, how does this film compare to other vampire flicks? And combine that, use polymerization. This is a horny ass film, isn't it?
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
Ha! But vampires are pretty horny, aren't they? So does it work? Is this like a horny vampire movie? What kind of vampire movie is this? I turn now to resident hematologist Dan. Dan, what's good?
This is maybe the most odd and wild out there vampire movie there is.
Mm-hmm.
But it was interesting as I watched it. I kept thinking about like the vampire lore and stuff. And it was really interesting to see how they took classic vampire lore and sort of changed it or twisted it or modified it a little bit. Like you said, typically vampires are very horny individuals. And there's a lot of that going on in this movie. But then there's also a ton of the sort of, what are they, ghouls that are created. But then you also see Carlson is sort of like the chosen one or whatever that the female like actually wants to like mate with or whatever, as opposed to just make a ghoul. It seems like you've got, of course, instead of draining and drinking blood, it's life force, but it's this very similar concept. You've got not stabbing vampires through the heart with a wooden stake, but with a leaded iron thing. And it's what, like,
just below the heart.
Yeah, below the heart.
Yeah, that's fucking stupid. I'm sorry.
Which was weird, but it got me thinking. One thing I never really thought about before that I just realized while watching it is I never really knew why the heart was like the thing you had to stab, aside from just like, oh, heart kills people. But like, in this, they stab them through the energy center, supposedly, or
Yes.
whatever. And I was thinking, well, vampires like drink blood, and the heart is like the center of your blood and everything.
Yes.
Like that's what controls your blood and does everything. Or I don't want to say controls your blood, but
Well, no, it does, because if your heart's strong enough, you can control someone else's blood. To keep going.
true. Yeah, true. Blood magic,
What?
blood bending. That's right. So I don't know. It was really cool to see how they twisted some of these typical vampire lores. Sometimes it was very wacky and maybe not the best, but it was really interesting to see.
Dan, that was a pretty damn good breakdown, I will say.
Thanks.
Normally I come in with the vampiric shit, but you fucking learned,
Well done.
bro.
Yeah.
Well done.
That was a very well done thing. There's only one or two small things that I really got to add to that. First, Dan, you were right on the money with Carlson being the chosen one, so to speak. Do you remember what act she does in particular to mark him as the chosen one? We actually talked about it already.
She kisses him.
Close. When she kisses him, essentially, they exchange life force, because when vampires just drain your blood, that can, in a lot of different, types of lore, that just kills you sometimes, right? In some lore, the vampire must give you some of their blood, because we see examples of that, for example, in like Queen of the Damned, that kind of universe, and other places as well where that happens. And also, we talk about energy vampires ostensibly. Now, keep in mind
like
this.
you.
True. But in Asian like cultures, and I don't remember like the specific name of the vampire, but they actually have like chi vampires that actually drain your chi. So I wonder if that maybe wasn't an influence on that, because I know this was based on a book from back in like the 70s.
Right.
So I don't know what influences that book may have had,
Curious
but
to read it.
yeah, it's interesting to see. But Nico, vampire flicks, how's this one compared to him?
It's weird. I feel like, in particular with the leaded iron, one, I am not a metallurgist, nor am I a chemist, but I did some internet investigation, if you will. And after a solid maybe like 10 minutes, I couldn't find anything that actually says that there is a alloy of iron and lead. When I dug a little further, their melting points are vastly different, so I'm pretty sure that can't actually be a thing. I could be wrong. Again, I am not a chemist. I am not a metallurgist. I don't know. But either way, the thing that frustrated me about that the most was that once, I can't remember if it was Carlson or Kane who took the actual spear out of one of the male vampires at the end, but when he does that, he turns to ash, and what's the point of the spear if you wouldn't have just done that anyway? I feel like that's better.
Well, the spear, I guess, is implied that turned him to ash. Almost kind of like, sometimes when you stab someone, they decently alive, and then you pull it out and they dead.
I mean, I guess, yeah. That's okay, sure. But I don't know. It just didn't seem that well put together in my frame of perspective.
No, I feel you. And I will say this too. I'm also not a chemist or a metallurgist, but I do lay pipe. And I can tell you that lead pipe had to get that one out of the way.
Thank
lead
you.
pipe.
It's not out of the way though.
I
Yeah,
know.
I hate
That
this.
could just be a Britishism saying a leaded pipe as opposed to a lead pipe.
Perhaps.
Like that could literally be it. Because in America, we'd refer to it as a lead pipe, which we got rid of because that shit is not good for your health.
Right,
But
yeah.
back then, it probably would have been a lot more common. So
They don't say leaded pipe, they say leaded iron.
indeed, that's very true.
You're the one talking about pipe and piping people.
As always.
You know what the first thing that pops up when you Google leaded iron is?
What's
This
that?
movie.
This movie, The Space Vampires, the book.
Incredible.
But also, apparently, lead is insoluble in iron, making it easy for machining chips to break and flake away.
Maybe they just took like an iron pipe or something and then just covered in pencil.
Did you know that lead was considered to be the useful metal in the time of the Romans? And for 5,000 years, it was used in products.
Yeah. Their entire aqueduct system and their whole plumbing system was lead. That's why
Right.
they had famously so much lead poisoning in their they got real fucked up by it, man.
Makes sense to me. All right. Now, quick question. This movie doesn't spend a ton of time in space, but we do get a couple spacey scenes. This movie came out in 85. Are there any inspirations you think on this movie or that this movie may have had on others?
Planet of the Vampires? Does that
Dude,
count?
I was just about to say that.
Just space vampires.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hate to say that this might have influenced Event Horizon, but it might have. But, like, I don't know. It's
All right.
the one thing that bugs me the most about this is as we were reading through this synopsis, there's been one thought that's just been lurking in the back of my mind. This, as we have summarized it on this episode, the plot for this is not super dissimilar from Tsukihime in parts.
Oh, bro, not only that, we literally cut out like a solid half of the events because they just don't make sense or don't have a lasting impact. There's just so much that we try to summarize. And most movies, you do a pretty bang up job. But this one, man, what the hell?
And another note on that really quickly, like both of you mentioned that this is a very horny film. My question is, for being such a horny film, why is everyone so fucking bad at kissing? Nobody's actually kissing. They're just going like pushing their faces up against each other with their mouths open. It's not at all convincing that this is acts of lust. This is just very bad puppeteering of limp, cold, dead bodies that are not at all inspiring enough for the setting to make up for its dull. I'll stop.
Shout outs to the audience. Nico criticizes the plot of porn. Just put that one out there. Nico's that guy.
There are
Apparently.
porn films with better plots than this, my guy.
No, there really are. There really are. I wouldn't know about that, but there really are. So,
Well, real quick, speaking of influences,
oh no.
you know, one of the writers is Dan O'Bannon,
Wait, that name sounds familiar.
who also wrote The Return of the Living Dead, which I had mentioned
Okay.
before,
Yes.
and Alien.
Oh,
So, do we see any similarities between this and Alien?
yes. When the vampire ship, it looks like someone tried to rip
This is
Geiger.
my last episode, guys. I'm quitting the
Yeah.
podcast.
And also, when they approach, the way they frame it with the spaceship being kind of tiny against the awe of it, the Halley's Comet, it's almost like when the Nostromo approaches the big planet because they frame it in such a way. But yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
I can kind of see that.
Except the CGI in this one is noticeably worse by a mile.
One of the other writers would go on to write Vampires.
Ah, the John Carpenter one.
Yeah.
Oh, Christ. Man, what a fucking film.
The horny went there. The horny went there.
Okay, no, I
Yep.
can't see that. My God.
Well, I got to ask you guys right fast. So, you know, sometimes Nico is talking about lust, but there's another L word that we don't like to use on the podcast.
Lick a tongue.
Linguistics.
All of these are true.
Legumes.
I like those actually. But regardless, do you think the space girl vampire she really loved Carlson? Or do you think it was
Fuck no!
all lust? You don't?
No, and that whole cornball harebrained, you are one of us the whole time, chosen one. Ending, like, bro, come on. No, absolutely the fuck not.
All right. All right. Dan, love, lust, something in between?
I don't think it was love necessarily, but I think that she did choose him to be more than a ghoul. Like, I don't think that was like an accident. I think that when he discovered her, I think she wanted something more from him. I don't know that she's capable of love, but yeah, I think she meant more than just rando ghoul.
She turned him from a ghoul into a gabagool, which, again, is lifeless meat.
So I'll say this. I'm going to take it back to the real early vampire texts and stuff like that. Bear in mind, like when Dracula was out and about, he didn't really court Lucy or Mina, you know? Like Dracula didn't take Lucy and Mina out on dates or anything. He saw and he wanted, and he did love in his own twisted way, the two of them. So I think in that way, I see the female vampire as wanting him. And, you know, in my mind, I kind of have my own headcanon that the female vampire is kind of like the real leader, and these males, she collects them, essentially.
Mm.
Beta vampire cucks.
Right, exactly. That's kind of what I'm thinking. So, I don't know. That's where I see it. But did she love him? Maybe not love in the way that, you know, Nico loves, you know, pasta that doesn't have, I guess,
Lead in it.
lead or gluten.
But like Mark's dad in Invincible.
Hey, we don't talk about that. And basically, I don't know. It's tough to say, but I do think she was attracted to him, and I think she wanted him to join her as a mate for as much love as that would entail. Now, I gotta ask you guys, do you have a favorite scene from this film?
The end credits, per Dan's earlier mention of the music being just absolutely rad.
Okay.
I think my favorite scene was the one Nico had ranted on earlier, the helicopter scene.
Okay.
Just when Patrick Stewart's blood just like comes out of him, and somebody else's blood too, I think.
There was a guy from, I think, the House of Lords who also died.
Yeah. And it just like congeals into this like weird heart thing that then morphs into the girl. And like, I was just along for the ride, bro. I was like, what the fuck is happening here? Okay, well, it's just happening. All right.
Yeah.
But it was out there. It was very unexpected. Not that a lot of this movie is particularly foreseeable.
Expected.
But yeah, that one caught me off guard.
So I'm going to say my favorite scene, and please don't take this as me endorsing the actions that happen in this scene. Rather, I felt like a passenger, not a passenger.
A hostage.
A voyeur.
Well, almost. I felt like someone on the mountain just watching a train wreck, and I know this is bad and shouldn't happen, but I can't look away. And let me set the scene. So Carlson's got his psychic powers now, and he uses it to see that there's this one chick who banged a random guy in like fake taxi or something. And then she goes back to the psych ward, and like she's a nurse there apparently. So they go back there, and then they busting up. They go in her house, and they're like, "Hey, you know, we got permission to come in here. Can you tell us about so and so?" And she starts talking, and I don't know. Carlson's not okay with this, so he hits her one back slap, and then Kane gets up and is like, "Hey, you can't do that." And then Carlson's like, no, look at her. She's a masochist. And she starts going into these like throes of ecstasy. And he's just like gripping her, you know, on the throat and everything. Wrong way, by the way, sides, not the front, guys. But he
Facts.
just like grips her the wrong way. And she's like, ah. And he's like, no, she's a masochist. She wants me to do this. And she's like, ah. And then he's like, if you don't want to see this, Kane, you can leave. And then Kane just sits down on the couch. He's like, no, I'm a voyeur. Please continue. And I'm just like, what the fuck am I watching right now?
Honestly, though. Toby, are you okay, bud?
Dude, and then she like she kisses him, has an orgasm, and passes out. They just leave her on the bed and move on with their lives. And I'm just like,
And she wasn't even like possessed or anything. So that was her.
yeah, that's the
Like-
part that fucked me up. He was like, I can look into her and see her desire. She's a masochist.
Yeah,
She's into
they're
this.
doing this all like Twin Peaks, Alan Wake, like psychic, hypnotic detective bullshit. This just him staring at her, yelling so fucking much, slaps her a couple of times. She gets off, I guess, and
Yeah.
the scene ends just like, Toby, my man, are you good?
I don't know. I really don't know. But there's certainly that. But I do want to turn now to the what would you do? And we're going to change it around a little bit. So I guess to make it simple, Nico,
Yeah.
what would Dan do in this movie? Let's say he's a member of the British
Sleep.
government trying to fix this. We're going to back out of it in the weekends or like sleep. What's Dan
Okay.
going to do?
I feel like he would be in charge of establishing the routes for getting supplies sent out. My dude is an Eagle Scout and can figure out ways to support people. I feel like that's something he would be good at.
All right. And do you think Dan would, when they're going to nuke the place, would Dan like leave at that
No,
point?
Dan would be fucked either way because it's a nuke.
True enough.
Yeah.
True enough. So
Which, hold on, pause. When Kane is going out of or into the occupation zone and he talks with one of the commanders on site, he says, like, something, I have to go back out there. We can't nuke them. Well, we only have an hour and a half. I would rather wait the hour and a half than instantly nuke the town. Like, are you, bro, for real?
And also, it's not even a town. It's London.
London.
Like one of the biggest and most powerful cities in the world.
Yeah, for true. So, Dan, what do we think Nico would be doing if he was on this investigation crew?
Being entranced by the female vampire.
Oh, absolutely.
Next question.
Yeah.
So literally Nico's role in the movie is he actually goes to find her.
Yep.
You found me. What are you going to do now? I don't know. You want to get it in? You're going to die. I mean, everyone's going to die eventually, right?
Yeah.
So
I go
that's
out
Nico.
happy. That's what happens.
He would. So Dan and Nico, how would Justin fare in this film?
Same answers.
Same
Nico.
answer.
All right. And listeners should have known that from the start. We're not special. So I want to take this to the critic review now. What do we think this movie has on Rotten Tomatoes from the critics? Give me your guesses.
So I am torn. I've mentioned a couple times recently how my own tolerance for just like absolutely fucking miserably bad cinema has gone up since we started doing this podcast. And I also know that horror fans have a strange amount of love in their hearts, our hearts, I should say, for just garbage. I know this is someone's garbage, and I know you love it, but I'm almost scared to think of how many people actually do love it. So you know what? I'm gonna do the time code. That's way too fucking generous. I'll say like a 40.
Okay. Dan, where does this movie sit for you?
I feel like the critics shit on it. I'm going to say a 44.
Oof. I will tell you, this has a 56
Okay.
from the critics. The audience was even less generous with a 46. But what does your life force tell you? Where do you rank this movie?
This movie was a wild fucking ride. I didn't particularly like it. However, I feel like with a little bit of like polishing or like a little bit of work on certain things, it could actually have been a lot of fun. It's still wild and crazy and batshit bonkers and whatever, but more fun for me. I think in Nico's earlier comment, I think of it being sort of all over the place, like tonally and not really knowing what it is. I totally agree with that. And I think if it had been a little bit more, if it knew what it wanted to be a little bit more, I think I would have liked it a bit more. So I'm going to give it a 65.
All right. I think that I'm probably right in that Dan region. I enjoyed this movie because it's schlock. It's not really great. And I get to see Patrick Stewart. I love Patrick Stewart. Patrick Stewart then dies almost immediately after.
If I had a nickel for the number of times that's happened in an IP, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't much, but it's strange that it's happened twice.
And like, there's a scene where they stab him in the neck with like dual needles, and I'm like, what are you guys doing? He's
the
a
man
person.
who does that, not a doctor.
I don't know. It's wacky. Is it good? No. But it is wacky fun to me. So I'm going to give it a 73, and it would be higher, but I feel like they ran out of money halfway through. I don't know why things started turning into zombies instead of vampires or ghouls even. Like, Dan, when you talked about Return of the Living Dead, I feel like they were like, bro, please help us out with the zombie shit. Because they looked nothing like the ghoulish vampires from the beginning of the film. And I don't know, that was just kind of sad. And even like, it was weird because they did a plot where like the prime minister was apparently a ghoul or a vampire or whatever. And he was still talking like normal and he was blending in. And I was like, yo, the 2 other ones we saw did not do that.
Even remotely.
I guess randomly some of them could. I'm not sure. So yeah, I think mad inconsistent, but a 73 is where I'm at. But now, Nico, I often take the last word as the primary hater, but I'm going to doff my cap to you on this occasion. Take us away.
It fits just right. Just like I knew it always would.
Sugoi.
Oh. Okay, so this movie got me, like, kind of mad. Something that I haven't even mentioned is that the pacing in this movie, while there is a lot of wacky shit happening, the pacing is just atrocious. The first half an hour is filled with so much jargon, gobbledygook, sci-fi nonsense that doesn't actually really ever amount to anything, that it took me until probably about 15, 20 minutes later to even realize the scope of what was happening. The acting, as we've said, is just really... it's a ride. I would compare it to... Y'all remember that train in East Palestine, Ohio, that let loose all those chemicals and killed all the, and just like ruined the environment? I would compare it to that in terms of my own personal enjoyment. As each scene went on, I just grew more and more frustrated. This is genuinely one of the worst movies I've ever seen. The audience gave it a 56, 5 plus 6. I'm giving this an 11.
Damn.
I did not fucking like this
That's
at
more
all.
hatred than you had for fucking Child's Play, I think.
Yeah, it is.
Wow.
I must say, as I was watching this, I was thinking and reflecting on that. This has now surpassed both Child's Play and Night of the Demons as the movie that I have just felt the most just pure ire, hatred, hostility, and instantly wishing that everyone except Patrick Stewart would die. Just... This is now my new white whale on this podcast. So here's a fucking lore update, everybody. I fucking hate this shit.
I will say this is also probably one of the biggest margins we've had between my 73 and your 11. We've got a 62-point spread. That's got to be the biggest one so far. Because I don't think, I mean, even when I did Ghost Stories and I hated Ghost Stories, I don't think the spread was that big.
Oh, the lows that I have sunk to from Justin's recommendations, dear listener.
You want to know what's the most ironic one?
It wasn't his recommendation.
It wasn't Justin's recommendation.
It's okay. This is a Justin-ass movie, so it's...
It is, totally.
It is.
Well, I know the answer to this. We're not recommending this one, are we, lads?
No.
Nah.
Yeah. So, you've heard it here.
Justin, I have to ask. You know this is bad, right? Would you actually recommend it?
Yes, I would have.
Okay.
Only because
All right.
it's culty.
You're nothing if not consistent, and I respect you for that.
But I respect your opinion on this one. It was well-founded with mad facts and harmonica and other things. So you heard it here. You heard Nico's ire. You heard Dan's kind of, this movie's mediocre. And you heard my grudging, maybe it's kind of okay, guys. So if you want to talk to us about our opinion, hit us up. We're on X and Instagram at DOTD Horror. We're also on Facebook. That's Don't Open That Door. Plus, check every episode we've done, including Child's Play, which used to be Nico's most hated movie until this one.
Yep.
That's DOTDhorror.com. But yeah, until next time, take care of each other.
Especially you, Toby.
R.I.P. Protect your life force. And as always, dear listener, don't open that door. Bye. You know he's dead, right?
I actually didn't know that.